Hi everybody, this is Magiabella for the Biophilic Alternative, your Sunday host. I would like to say first of all, Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and I hope you had a very enjoyable day because it is much and well deserved. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about Mercury retrograde and its impact and what you can do to help that energy tide work a little better in your life. Things to negate some of the more negative connotations that Mercury retrograde has. But first I want to start with Mercury, the planet Mercury itself, which is a very small, fast-moving planet that sits closest to the sun. Mercury relates astrologically more to our internal and personal life than to our life outside. Mercury is not only the messenger from God to man, which would be the sun to us, but also the internal messenger, the link between the eternal and the mundane, between our soul and our personality. It represents the sense perceptions and communication devices that are our true self and the divine spark residing within us. It uses this to run the machinery of our body, and insanity would be considered the broken link that normally through our mind and eyes heaven bears witness to earth, basically. So it's how God may still talk to man. So basically it's the communication of the energy from the sun, and Mercury is sort of like a buffer or an amplifier of that. And as we get into what retrograde is, you may understand why things go a little bit crazy. Because Mercury, being the planet of iron, as it's on this side of the orbit where we are, it does its job and does its job very efficiently. It's when it goes into retrograde that things start to sometimes fall apart, and you'll understand more about that if you understand what Mercury does in our charts and what its energy tide is. Mercury rules the mind, the senses, not the sense organs, but the actual senses, and communication, speech, writing letters, radio, TV. It symbolizes siblings, intelligence, skills, techniques, powers of logic, reason, perception, short journeys, and one's capacity to be educated. All three symbols are present in Mercury's symbol. The cross of earth, manifestation, this circle of spirit, and the uplifted crescent of personality. Mercury is neither masculine nor feminine, but a neutral. It is silver, reflecting all that it contacts. And the more aspects you have in Mercury in your chart, the greater and more complex your consciousness is. The reflective mind needs aspects for its expansion, and the closest aspect is the most important one in your chart. In the physical body, it rules the central nervous system, the arms, the hands, the shoulders, the lungs, and the respiratory tract. The position by house in your chart is where your mind and your attention is focused. Gemini goes retrograde 3 or 4 times a year for 3-week periods of time. Mercury rules 2 signs, and that is Gemini as thought and communication, perceiving relationships and how things are alike. And it also rules Virgo, where it analyzes, gathers facts, and digests experience, discriminates, and purifies. So this is relevant because this is 2 different sides of what Mercury is and does, and that's why it rules an air sign, but it also rules an earth sign. So that'll give you some idea of the energy that can be working in Mercury retrograde. So what is a retrograde? Mercury retrograde is a period of time when Mercury appears to be going backwards against the sky, We observe this about 4 times a year as Mercury races past the part of its orbit that is closer to the Earth and begins to travel to the farther side of the Sun. And while it's on the other side of the Sun is when it starts to appear to go backward and forward in movement as it's coming back around. So that gives it its retrograde appearance. Mercury never really goes backwards. It's just our perspective from Earth. Most of the phenomenon that people experience and attribute to Mercury retrograde deals with delays, difficulties, challenges in areas that Mercury rules, which includes communication, details, local transportation, information, the media, computers, awareness, reality checking, documents, workload, scheduling, execution, and completion of tasks. Now, the retrograde itself only lasts for 3 weeks. However, there is a pre-shadow and a post-shadow period of time. And that extends the experiences of the phenomenon that you're going through and should not be ignored. The shadow period lasts about 2 weeks each. So the whole Mercury retrograde process, including the shadows, lasts about 5 weeks. The lessons that you can get from Mercury retrograde. That process reveals the errors that come about from ignorance, from not paying attention to the details, due diligence, not paying attention to the quality or performance or proper execution of tasks and responsibilities. Many of the challenges that reveal themselves during Mercury retrograde as a result from these false assumptions, overgeneralizing, laziness, or unverified shortcuts, wrong beliefs, or understandings. A lot of times that really truly means that you weren't paying attention. You just didn't understand that it was in one of the shadow periods, and then the retrograde comes back in and gets you. For this reason, when you go into the retrograde cycle, which we are in the pre-shadow period right now, it is important to check and recheck the fine print before making any important decisions. It's especially contracts and stuff like that that could lock you in for a long time. It's also important to check and recheck schedules for trips and appointments for last minute changes, because Mercury, being a quick moving planet, rules journeys, quick trips, travel, and oftentimes there are travel delays, all kinds of unexpected problems coming up with travel. And so it's important that it's not that the world comes to an end when Mercury is in retrograde. It just seems like everything takes a little bit longer and is a little bit more complicated to get to the end destination. You need to take time to catch errors that you not only made by you but by others who are also affected by the retrograde. So a lot of times it may not be anything that you've done, but other people are being affected as well, and they can mess up. So it's part of the process is that everyone is a little bit off kilter when Mercury goes into retrograde, and it has again a lot to do with Mercury, who is our bumper and our amplifier between the sun's energy and Earth. And then when that's gone and it's gone back behind the sun, it causes the energy to change in a more erratic way. Mercury serves as a way of smoothing the antenna out when it's in front of the sun, between us and the sun. But as it goes back behind the sun, things go a little bit nuts. As much as Mercury retrograde may seem like a challenge in some ways for some people, it is potentially an expansive time for finishing tasks that have been left undone, for reviews, self-assessments, creative or intuitive writing. It's especially good for writing and journaling. It's a time to support new directions, explorations, and break free of dry beliefs and stale understandings. Just don't ignore the reality checking part. There's actually 5 distinct periods that are related to Mercury retrograde, and that's the pre-shadow phase, which we're in right now, the first Mercury station, which is often referred to as the day the planet moves into retrograde, but actually what the station is when the planet stops moving altogether. It is when it's going forward like this and then stops till it starts going back like this and then stops. That would be the second station as it stops and then looks like it's going forward again. In that movement, you will have the pre-shadow phase, the retrograde itself, and then the post-shadow phase. The 3 periods are very distinct because what happens in the pre-shadow, it's very important right now that if you pay attention to the events that are happening from the 5th of May on, and you kind of journal the events, key aspects, you'll find that you're going to be revisiting those key aspects as you're going, here's May 5th, and as you're going day by day, things may be coming up, issues. Then it goes stationary, and it's going back, and it's going to hit those same key points again to revisit what it was that initially came up. Then it's going to go stationary again, and then it's going to go back through just to make sure you got it right. It's kind of like it's the issue, it's the checking it, and it's the rechecking it, going back out the other way. It gives you time to reassess things. It gives you time to make sure that you're making the right decision. It gives you time to rethink, reassess. Depending on where the retrograde happens, it will affect different houses in the zodiac. This time, Mercury is going retrograde in the house of Gemini. It's very at home in Gemini, and so it's going to be a lot about all the things that Gemini rules. The 3rd house of Gemini rules that communication, that thinking process and stuff. But Gemini tends to be not so emotional. So the emotions are not to play, and this is going to be more like a logical assessment versus an emotional assessment. So these are the issues that'll be coming up. Now, why is Mercury retrograde different for everybody is because not everybody has Gemini in their 3rd house. I don't have Gemini in my 3rd house. I have it in my 1st house. I still get affected by 3rd house issues because that's what Gemini is, but those issues are going to be found in my 1st house because I'm a Gemini rising. That means that I'm going to take things more as an internal assessment. It's going to be, the 1st house is about me, myself, and I. It is the I am. And Gemini is I think. So I think, therefore I am, is sort of the theme that I'm going to be going through in this retrograde period of time. Everybody else is going to be a little bit different. If you happen to be Gemini rising, that's how it's going to affect you. If you happen to have Gemini in your 2nd house, then financially it may impact the way you think about finances or those kind of things, because the communication should be probably more about your money house and that kind of things. Or if it's in your 12th house, Gemini would be thinking of in terms of your spirituality, and you would be back into a more spiritual aspect of thinking and reassessing maybe your views on God, Goddess, your spirituality in general. You may be reassessing your belief system in general. This is how it affects you in retrograde. So if you're paying attention to what's going on in pre-shadow, it will let you know exactly what it is that you're going to be faced 2 more times. You're going to revisit that point in time 2 more times. So if you pay attention and you write down, kind of journal, and see what kind of issues are coming up for you, then you can curtail some of the more negative aspects of what Mercury retrograde can do to you by actually assessing the situation itself and actually starting to think and analyze about it to try to rectify the problem. Or maybe it's an internal dialogue with yourself issue, but don't avoid, because when you avoid or push aside or ignore, that's the times that Mercury retrograde really kind of hits you on your ass, because it's telling you this is what's going to happen, and you got to take it with a grain. You have to actually do something about it. You need to be functional in your thought process, and in that way you will divert a lot of the negativity associated with Mercury retrograde. It's about wanting you to literally take the time. If you have an issue coming up repeatedly, it's something that you need to take care of. On this pre-shadow, my computer had adware on it, and I have been avoiding doing the real fix to get it done. When it hijacked my browser again, which is why I did not get the video up before. I was going to put it out on Saturday so that I wouldn't be doing it on Mother's Day. I had an issue with that adware that was taking over, and I knew I needed to. I'm not going to stop and wait on this time of the Mercury situation. I got my new virus program. I did that. It took a day and a half to pull all the crap off my computer and get it running more efficiently again. But I did it because I knew that if I didn't, then I was going to have one issue after another through retrograde telling me this is one of the issues that you need to be taking care of. My computer has become very important to me since I've been doing these videos, then the things that I do on the Witch's Lair, and I didn't want to miss out on that. That is something that I truly enjoy. I enjoy the videos. I also enjoy watching the videos, and I also enjoy the Witchy Wednesday chat that we have on the Witch's Lair. And the last thing I wanted was my computer to go down. Would it have been the end of the world? No, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. But it would have made my life a lot more complicated as this adware was getting more and more malicious in my computer. And it has, like I said, and I'm still dealing with it. It is probably 90% corrected. But I have gotten through most of the corrections. There was just so much that this adware had insidiously gone in and infected. And if you leave it on your computer, just as a word of note, it will continue to regenerate itself and embed itself in all of your other files. And that's how even on virus programs, they can't just eliminate it, because it goes into protected files like Internet Explorer and those things, and makes it to where you can't delete that program because it's a way of protecting itself. So it is like a parasite, and although it doesn't do malicious stuff like a virus does, it's doing that so that it can put pop-up ads all over your screen when you go on to the internet and stuff like that. So it does become a problem and an issue. And this is a very definite Mercury retrograde kind of thing. It's kind of what it does. So the key points to remember on the dates right now is that from late May 4th through the 13th of May, it will be in its mild influence of pre-shadow. The 14th through the 17th, it will start being a lot stronger in its influence. The 17th, I think it's the 18th and the 19th, it will go stationary, and then start on the 19th, start to move in retrograde. Those will be two of the hardest days of the retrograde period. So the 18th and the 19th will be the two most difficult days for retrograde. And then the 20th through around, I think it's the 10th, June 10th, is going to be the full retrograde period, and the 11th is going to be the second station of Mercury before it starts going forward again. So we've got some heavy-duty days of influence. From the 18th through the 24th will be a fairly difficult period of time for most people. The 25th through the 5th of June will have a less impactful but still in full retrograde. And then the 6th through the 10th will be a lot stronger part and felt in the retrograde itself. The 11th will be another difficult day as it prepares to go direct again. And then through the 12th through the 17th of June, it's going to still have very strong influence, but it's going to be in post-shadow and making sure that you've corrected, done your work, eliminated, whatever the issues are and how you have to handle it. It's going to go back through and make sure that you've done your work. And then through the 18th through the 27th, it's going to be a little bit more mild as it starts to wane down and start going full direct. Anytime after the 21st of June, you should be fairly good to go with everything, because it should have been enough forward movement that it's not truly affecting you, although it may bring up those subjects one more time just to make sure it's how you really truly wanted that situation to be. It does give you 3 chances to work on the same issue over and over and over again. Besides the journaling in your pre-shadow period of time, to kind of give you a clue as to what aspects that you're going to actually be dealing with, there is a couple of other things that I can give you a list to help you handle Mercury retrograde. Number one thing is back up all your data. So if you haven't backed up your computer, or you haven't backed up a lot of different things that you have, like your phone, things like that, you really need to take the time right now to back it up, because Mercury retrograde can cause a lot of crashing of electronic equipment. Frequently messes up satellites and communications that way as well. And again, it's because the iron planet that creates that kind of it's sort of like a filter from the sun, and when it goes back behind the sun, it starts messing with everything. So if you back it up, you should be good to go. Expect travel delays, which means prepare for it when you're going on a trip or a journey. And that means that if you're going to be flying or whatever, then make sure that you have extra things in your bag for you to do while you're waiting in long delays or things like that. check and double check everything that you're packing so that you don't forget something very important for your trip. If you are going to go on a road trip, make sure you have things like spare tires and stuff like that, just in case you run into trouble, because Mercury retrograde has a way of bringing it out, just different issues like that. Also, confirm your plans. So no matter how reliable you are and how on track you can stay through Mercury retrograde, other people are also going to have snafus in the plans that you make and stuff like that. So always confirm and reconfirm your commitments with people in retrograde so that you're less likely to get your signals crossed. And basically it is focus on the prefix re. In other words, when it goes backwards, it means review all your contracts before you sign, renew your commitments or your vows rather than making new ones. Mercury retrograde is a great opportunity to handle unfinished business and go back and get it all cleared up. Most of us start a million things and we don't complete without realizing how much psychic clutter that creates. So the retrograde period is a great time to go back and tie up loose ends. Press repeat. Misunderstandings abound when the messenger Mercury runs amok, so be prepared to repeat yourself often, to speak slowly and deliberately. If you're delegating things to like employees or kids or whatever, make sure that the person you address really understands the instructions that you gave, and don't assume that they do, because in retrograde people will miss the obvious. Plan a reunion. Mercury retrograde also brings up things from the past. And it's a great time to reconnect with your roots, get in touch with old friends, and don't be surprised if people from your past track you down out of the blue, or you run into each other randomly or stuff like that, because it happens all the time. Beware of the X factor. Speaking of people from your past, ex-loves have a habit of creeping back in around Mercury retrograde. You may hear from the most random ex-boyfriends or former flames, even from childhood crushes. Proceed with caution, and you'll see if a second time around is better than the first, or more of the same old song and dance. So just keep that in mind. A lot of exes come out of the woodwork at this time. Think before you ink. Mercury rules contracts. So, if possible, before you sign any deals, or at least read everything with extra care, either wrap up important negotiations before the cycle starts, or wait to sign the documents after Mercury goes back direct. Also, reconsider. Do not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't write off anybody in this time. Don't make a snap decision, because Mercury retrograde is a great time for a do-over and a revisiting whatever the issue might be. So you can remember that it can give you a second chance on something that maybe you thought was dead, but before you move forward and just cut your losses, sometimes it is nice to give it a second shot, just to make sure that it is the right decision. And then basically surrender. Just go with the flow. If it causes delays, just have a mindset that you're not going to let everything get to you, and that just think to yourself, it's just Mercury retrograde. It just means that I need to learn my patience and just breathe. And maybe this is time to catch up on a book while you're waiting. If your car breaks down and you have to sit at the car shop or whatever, bring a book and take the time and just say, I can't be anywhere but where I'm at. Just relax into it. And maybe you can actually just always keep that, a book, some reading that you wanted to do, journaling that you wanted to do, things that you might not have personal time to do. Have it with you. Have it in a bag. Have it in the car with you. Because when something goes wrong, it may just give you the opportunity to revisit something like that. And then you will have a more pleasant Mercury retrograde instead of the negative that it always brings up. Remember to be extra cautious with yourself too, because it can take you out of balance, which means people can do things like fall, trip, sprain their ankle, that kind of thing. So just keep those things in mind, and just always know when you're running into those delays or those communication glitches or whatever, just strike it up to Mercury in retrograde and just let it go. You'll find that everything runs smoother when you take that attitude with it. In your magic work, use this as a time to reassess your goals and what you're wanting to accomplish, because you may find that in the retrograde period that there was something not quite right about the path that you wanted, and this gives you time to reassess what those desires are, and gives you an ample opportunity to refocus and redirect or remount an energy push towards that goal again. So just use it as a positive instead of a negative, and things will be all right. It is just Mercury retrograde. So y'all have a wonderful day and a blessed Mother's Day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.